Welcome everyone to Spirit Coffee Talk. I'm Ginette Byro, and with me is Elyse Catherine and Lisa Richmond, and we are the mediums and channelers at Avalon Spirit. And today is a very, very special episode because today is going to be our last episode for the summer, because we are taking a pause on SCT for the summer so that we can kind of, sit, recalibrate, ground, be busy with life, with families, and then reconnect in the fall. And this is actually a really cool thing. I have to say, like, the normal standard is to keep doing. And I think there's so much power in pausing, right? We talk about like practice the pause. And so as much as I love when we connect like this, I also am so excited for the pause. And I know for myself personally, I have created a pause in a lot of my stuff this summer. So I'm really excited about that. So anyways, today we're going to talk about what this year has brought forward for us so far, what this means, and what to do with it as we move into these beautiful summer months, especially in the Northern Hemisphere here. So welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
How are we feeling, ladies?
I'm excited. I feel that excitement move in. I was saying my kids' last day of school was yesterday, and it feels like Christmas to me. This time of year does.
Yeah.
Because to me it indicates freedom, right? The schedule and just having that freedom. And I do so much better when I can be outside on a regular basis. And so this the sunshine out, and me being able to connect with the sun, being able to connect with Gaia and be out in her environment as much as humanly possible is an absolute drive for me. So I'm like so excited to be able to go to the lake and be by water and play outside and just explore that really like fun loving, very playful aspect of self, which represents summer to me, or summer represents that for me, I should say. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm ready to step forward in my play, and I feel like that's a real generator for me. What about you, Elyse? How are you feeling?
Yeah, same. It feels like a big, it feels like there's a lot of transition that will come over the summer, um, both with my own situations, but also collectively. And I mean, we've been seeing that already. But for me, I always laugh because like I don't have skin babies, I have fur babies. But I always wonder, like, at what point in my life will the year not go from September to June, and then the summer months? I always think of like not the calendar year, but the collective school year in my mind as like
Totally. I
the
do too.
year.
September to June is like a
Yeah.
year, right? And then the
Yeah. And then
summer
you get the
months are like
summer.
time off. I know that's such a North
Mhm.
American thing, but truly that's how it
It
feels.
is. Yeah, it's like calendar year for me just doesn't like always compute in the same way.
Yeah.
So I always think like, will that ever change? But obviously not. So yeah, it always feels like you kind of hit that, early July, end of June, and everybody's excited, and there's this kind of, bubbly, summertime fun energy in the air. And I think I love that. And for me, I'm really looking at how to integrate that with change, right? Because, collective energy and all of that stuff still rolls on, and our lives still roll on, and kind of merging the two. It feels like, an interesting, I'm not necessarily having a super slowdown in all aspects of my work, but in a lot of ways I am, and was really trying to be intentional in creating space for transition, which I feel like is also potentially a collective thing as well.
Absolutely.
And the cycles too, I feel like we go by calendar year, like New Year with January 1st. But when we look at our cycles and actually like human behavior and how our body is connected to the moon and the earth, and how we then respond to the cycles, whether the seasons are internal cycles, specifically with women, like spring and summer is a time of like what you would consider kind of like the ovulation time. It's the time of like celebrating. You get into the celebration mode, you get into the doing and the dancing and the moving and the action, right? You're filled with that heat, and you're doing more, you're out, you're able to actually physically sleep less, be awake more, have more physical interaction. You connect to the more of the light, the sun's out longer. And so you're actually doing more, you're creating that natural heat, and you have that activation. And that is like with our human anatomy, like our human bodies are connected to the earth that way, as well as like the actual seasons around us in the northern hemisphere. That's where we're at. And then when we move into the fall, it is kind of like a time to start coming in, wrapping up, creating the schedule more, coming inside more. And then winter is like kind of that like dark womb space, you know, the time where you come in and you nest and you like hibernate. Essentially, you have less energy to go do. It's darker, you know, you kind of come into your space more, you're more tired, you sleep more, you have the warm foods, and like that's the kind of cycle of it. So we're kind of moving into the cycle of the heat, of the generator, of the doer, of the celebration. And I can really feel that both like in my body physically, but also like collectively, what's around, the excitement of people being outside and doing more. You know what I mean? And I think that if we connect naturally with our bodies and our body's response and the earth's response and the natural cycles of our environment, it's probably easier for us to allow what unfolds naturally within those cycles to occur, right?
That's so true.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that that speaks to an even kind of greater cycle that we've taken on this year that we can see astrologically, but how we've really front loaded this year. And so astrologically speaking, we've mentioned it on SCT before, how the different alignments had to do with karma, had to do with death and rebirth, had to do with closures of cycles. And we took on a lot of deep internal clearing and transmuting and forgiveness and finding compassion through the first half of the year. And now we're like on the cusp, we're at the precipice. We're like right there, actually, in the middle for the second half of the year. And the energy now, because of everything we've cleared out, is really making space for movement, for creation and action. Like Spirit is saying action, take action, swan dive, leap, all the words, right?
Because creation is such a great word for it too.
Yeah, because we've made space for it. We've gone through, for many people, that dark night,
that
now
shedding
coming to the light.
That shedding of the old, releasing it, and then creating the space for that like light and creation and you know, rebirth kind of feel.
And I think we're seeing that like on the collective stage in different groups and organizations, but we're also really seeing that in individual journeys, right? Like it's really neat how it seems to be permeating all levels in some form.
Yeah.
And it's a magnificent time of change, like transformational change on the planet, like quantum leaps in consciousness.
Yes.
Yeah. And I really feel that.
And because that's happening, whether people like it or not, it's happening. But how you are experiencing it depends on the frequency in which you're residing in. So with these huge leaps and these huge developmental, like earth leaps, energetically, physically, all of it that's happening collectively right now, if you want, okay, what are they saying? It's almost like what you feed it, it will grow like a steroid, right? So what you want, remember, like, what do you want? That's been a theme too. What you put your energy into, like what you decide to feed will grow. With the sun's intensity, with the energetic frequency, with this huge leap that is happening, literally what you give your attention to will get fed tenfold. So like choose. And it's not a fear thing. It's not like be careful. It's like really allow yourself this opportunity of like enormous growth with what you give your energy every day. Talk to the environment or the energetic form, or just speak as though you are in the exact place that you want to be in. That everything that's surrounding you is exactly what you have called in. I am so grateful for the abundance, blah, 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 whatever it is, the affirmations, because when you put that in the forefront, the right here, right now, it gets fed like a steroid. They said they're showing me, like the Miracle Grow that you would like put on a flower or something like that. Like when you're putting that out there, it's like the Miracle Grow of manifestation. It's not saying I want to change this, I want to change this. It's right here, right now. Let it grow of everything that you want, because that is the energy of the collective right now.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing
I have to
Celebrate.
Yeah, totally.
I have to say too, I feel like since this really, there was, you know, that week with the Schumann resonance, and there was this kind of week to 2 week period early June where it was like so many alignments, and you could just, everybody could feel this like intense vibrational up leveling energy. And I'll say that since then, I feel like it really reminded me of like the 5D energy that we were in Maui, of like everything was just like flowing and working out, and like even if things were a little wobbly, it would just like sort itself out, and you could look back quite quickly. It wasn't this like, oh, I can look back 2 months from now and see, oh, that worked out for the highest good. It was like these really immediate resolutions and understandings, and this flow that was just so beautiful. And then you know, since then, I've noticed there is, you know, these ups and downs and these kind of roller coastery things. And so many people are reaching out to me and being like, this happened and then this happened. And where is this coming from? And some like intensity or some, you know, what you might say wobbliness or stressors or whatever. But one of the things that I've really noticed in myself, and I've heard it in other people too, is that there's this, and Spirit's just saying it's like, we have to remember we're still all living on the same planet, right? We're still having the same experiences, and we can see things happening around us. But since that period of time, there's this shift in the way for those of us doing this work and supporting our growth and our evolution. There's this shift in how we experience those things, and what that has looked like for myself, as well as, you know, a lot of the people that I've spoken to, is like something will come up and maybe it creates a little bit of like chaos or stress or whatever in your life, and then there's this very strong undercurrent that's coming through of like, you're okay, it's fine, like grounding you back into yourself. It's not as hard to access that or to hear that or to understand that. And it's allowing us to very quickly shift out of like, yeah, life things happen and things can be stressful and we can worry or get in an argument with our partner or this happens or whatever. But the turnaround time feels so much quicker and is allowing us to reroute back into that 5D experience of like, and going back to what do I want and choosing, and that Miracle Grow experience of like, great, that just happened. Here's what I'm choosing. And not in a bypassing way either, because that's something I always talk about, right? Like, feel your feelings, work through it, somatically support yourself, da 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 da. But it feels like since that kind of mid-June period where the energy just went off the charts, it's been so much easier to transition back into the place that you want to be in, the energy that you want to put towards what you're calling in, that kind of 5D flow energy of like, okay, take a breath, that was that, moving on. And we can just kind of like turn towards so much easier and so much quicker, even though there's still stuff happening around us, right?
Yeah.
And we're not getting like pulled into it. It's just, it's happening, move forward. And then maybe something else comes up, and then we can turn towards what we want.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge, like that itself is a huge indicator that there has been a shift, because like, look at that, like our ability to be able to observe and reflect on things like that is like an indicator of an upgrade for sure. Because no, you're not bypassing it, but you're observing it and you're like, whoa. Wow, I really experienced that, or holy, I'm getting triggered with this or this. And being able to just observe it from that is already an indicator of such an upgrade, is the observation from the outside perspective without having to be so emotionally like turned upside down, essentially. Right? Like you can be like, normally I would really be affected by this. And I'm not saying I'm not affected. I'm totally acknowledging it, but I'm like observing it more than I am like messy in it. Right.
Totally.
And then you can change those patterns by just choosing different results, essentially.
Yeah.
And I see that all over the place.
My guides are saying this is essentially freedom. This is a concept of freedom. Freedom we think is like this, like nothing else exists in a way, like nothing can bother, poke, disrupt or anything. But freedom is really when we can sit in the place of observation and then choose based on our free will what we want. Like that essentially is freedom. Freedom to choose, freedom to do, freedom to be in any given moment.
Right.
But it's not
interesting.
Yeah, like we think freedom, maybe I'm wrong, I'm generalizing. I think freedom before used to be embodied in the imagery of a bird soaring in the sky where nothing is limiting them. They're just moving through air. But that's a piece of freedom. But freedom, the way that they're saying it, is that conscious choice in any given moment to choose and align and do and be that which you are.
Exactly.
And that imagery, if you think about it, because I have a very similar view of freedom. And when as you were saying that, I was like, yeah, I picture like a bird flying on this blue sky, beautiful day. Birds fly through storms.
Yeah.
It's not like it's always sunny where the birds are, you know?
Yeah, it's true.
It's not always peaceful, perfect. There's a navigation. There's a having to make choice. Oh, I sense this storm. I need to shift where I'm going, or I need to hunker down somewhere and care for myself and keep my little birdie family safe. It's not just all sunshine where the birds
hang
are.
out in a very big like bush where no one can see me.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I love that. I love
That's an interesting concept.
You know, freedom has been a word that's come up with me the last couple of days too, like nonstop freedom, freedom, freedom. And that's always been like one of my like soul drivers in this life is the concept of freedom. And you're right, G, like how much freedom can be experienced with everyday things and everyday choices. And such a personal freedom comes from your ability to connect with yourself, you know, independently of anybody else's perceptions, reactions, anything. That's ultimate freedom, is your own autonomy and your own ability and sovereign right to choose exactly what you want in any given situation.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of creating like a pattern, an older pattern of mine, because I needed that sense of freedom, is I would create situations that I could just break free from. Right. And that was like massively self-sabotaging because it really would throw wrenches in my life.
Right.
Because I would like crave instead of trusting myself and my own choices, trusting what myself and my reaction to things are, trusting that allowed me freedom, freedom of choice, freedom of life. You know what I mean? And it was interesting because okay, hold on. So it's so funny when things come in and I'm like, okay, I want to get this right. Okay, what are they saying? They're saying that right now, this is a big theme, the freedom thing. And so they're saying individuals will continue to be enlightened through experience and interactions with others so that they're able to view their own sense of self and their own like prosperity within freedom with relationships is a big one that's going to continue to show up. So that's interesting. I'm going to have to go back and listen to what I just said. But yeah, like for example, if somebody expects you to react a certain way, it's almost like they will lead you within a relationship or a dynamic, lead you to a response or lead you to a choice or something based upon their perception of how you would react. And quite often we will then react in that way because it's almost a subconscious way of doing things. But they're saying really be conscious about that. Step back and observe, is that actually how you feel? Okay. So like if somebody's put in a situation, they're like, are you sure it's okay? Or, oh, I'm sure this isn't okay. Or I'm sure you're feeling overwhelmed. Or I got this. Or and you're like, whoa. You can either be like, yeah, there's so much going on right now and I can't keep up. Or you can be like, actually, no, I am fine. Do I feel overwhelmed because I actually feel overwhelmed, or do I feel overwhelmed because that is the perception that others are leading me to feel subconsciously, right?
Mhm.
So the freedom in itself is absolutely stepping back from the nucleus and observing the situation so that you can actually connect with your own energy and say, yes, this is this, or this is not that. That's
Mhm.
ultimate freedom. And they're saying we are shining a spotlight right now on that for people so that they can
Yeah.
see that in that light. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Did that come through
Yeah, I totally get it.
clearly? Okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I like that.
Cool. I like that too.
I was
That's
half
I
listening.
wrote down thing illumination summer, illuminating. So obviously that's
Mm.
what it was about. That was one of
Amazing.
the key words that they gave me today, was the illumination of summer.
Mm.
Elyse, where
I
did you
was
go?
yeah, I was half listening. So I'm gonna have to go back and listen to what you said as well, Lisa, because I got snippets of it. But they were talking to me about this idea of our relationship with freedom and how we kind of like the fundamental aspect, and this comes into like any kind of spirit conversation that we have about like what's going to happen, what's in my best highest good. We want predictions, we want, premonitions, we pull cards to get an understanding of an outcome, da 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 da. But there's this fundamental piece of human free will, right? And spirit will very 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 rarely ever interject with that human free will, right? And it's this idea that as humans, and specifically in the world and the Western world that we found ourselves in, and a lot of the cultures that we find ourselves in, there's this idea of like we want this freedom, but we actually have a really hard time holding it. How
Mhm.
often do we, like, I've asked this, I know people ask this of me in readings, like, well, what do I do? Tell me what to do. And it's like, but that's your fundamental choice. That
Mhm.
is your ability to connect with your freedom of choice at any given moment. And sometimes that freedom choice is harder than others. It's not to say it's always easy breezy and a simple choice, but there is always that freedom of choice. And as humans, and our cute little brains, we have a really hard time holding that because our brains just want to know, well, what's going to happen? How is this going to work out? But what do I do? What's the best outcome? What's the da da da? And we get really caught in this head aspect of freedom versus like, what is freedom for you in this moment? What does it feel like? What does it look like? What does your heart want? What does your soul want?
Mhm.
What does your body want? And that as we shift more into this illumination of summer, like you were saying, Lisa, and this kind of like pause moment that we're going into, we're getting these triggers, these kind of ups and downs, like I was talking about, from a new energy, so that we're able to renegotiate what that looks like. And we're able
Mm.
to really
Yeah.
reconnect with like the true definition of freedom. It's not just the bird flying in the sunny sky, but it's always being able to come back to yourself and your choices. And there is, even in the hardest of moments, there is always freedom that can be accessed, whether that's your own internal experience, whether that's what you're choosing in any sort of situation, whether it's just deciding in a hard moment to pause and like go outside and put your feet in the grass. That's freedom, to just like connect with something greater than yourself. It's so much bigger than our little brains, and culture and society has let us believe, and we just have a hard time holding it. So it's like, can we, through this summer, reconnect with like, what does freedom actually feel like? Not what does my brain want it to look like? What do other people tell me it should look like? What does the
Yeah.
world tell me it should look like? It's like, what does that feel like for me? Because it's also going to be different for everyone.
Mhm.
And we always have an inroad to it. And we always did, and we always will. It just feels like that door is opened
Yeah.
more because we can access that flow state and that, you know, that different energy versus earlier years, earlier energy states on the planet. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Totally does. And you know what? I want to say too, Spirit talking about freedom and emphasizing freedom and what it looks like is the absolute most beautiful precursor to action, which is the energy that we're in, which is like, take action, make a choice, move with the momentum, because there's momentum here, right? So like, if we're sitting in this opportunity of freedom and we have freedom of choice within the energy now of movement, like, how amazing is that? Honestly, like we're all sitting in this universal flowing river now that isn't just whirling in a pool where we're stuck in this like whirl or churning. Some of us, we're actually like moving along now. So it's kind of like, where do you want to be? Like, there's so much that can happen in a short amount of time now. I feel like for a lot of people, like the second half of this year now, when people look at where they were, say right now, and then by December and they look back, people have this ability for such big transformation to happen in a span of 6 months, or if they look back to a year or whatever. But like, if we're coming onto the heels now of, or the tail end of this 4 years worth of growth from 2020 to 2024, and now we're entering into that last 6 months of it, like some amazing wrap ups, culminations, new journeys, new phases, all based on personal freedoms and choice and action within the universal energies of action potentials. Like, we're sitting on this like cannon, but this cannon is a really good cannon, right? It's kind of like, where are you going to point your cannon? Because you're going, right? And like, you're holding the match to light it. You just point it in the direction that you want. Like, it feels such a positive, uplifting, like upward arc type thing. This isn't like downward falling down a mountain. This is like upward propulsion into higher dimensional consciousness, forward trajectories, high alignments like this. It's such a beautiful, magical time. And then magic is the one word Spirit has been using over and over and over about the summer months, is that the summer months are like that gold sparkling magic that we think of in like fairy tales and movies. Like, it is full of that energy, and we can tap into that, and we really should take advantage of the readiness of that, because it can amplify so much in our journey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Summer's the best.
Right?
I can love summer. I love it.
I agree. I agree.
Here's a little tidbit just to add on. When we're talking about freedom and then it being the precursor of action, one thing that they're saying to remember is in the concept of creating freedom for yourself so that you can take action, a thing to do and where to start is trusting in yourself. So it's practicing using your own internal guidance system and not looking outside of yourself for the next right step, right? So when we're talking about action, and Elyse, when you're talking about, when you were saying like, but I want to know what to do, like what is going to happen? What next? What should I do? Kind of thing. You know, that is a big question. It's like, just tell me what to do. Tell me what's going to happen. The whole purpose of this concept of freedom is freedom of choice based upon your trust of your internal guidance system, your intuition. So the real kicker here, the like ignition, is your internal guidance system, your intuition. And the more you can practice trusting your intuition, the more freedom you feel and the more action you can have, because it's your system that's guiding you to the next step. It's your intuition that you have learned to trust in order to take that next step, and trust that when you're ready for it, that it shows up. You don't have to go around looking for things. It shows up based upon your readiness, and your readiness is amplified by your internal system knowing that you have all the answers. So we aren't necessarily taught how to trust our intuition. So I say like tangible things are little steps every day that you can give yourself the ability to say, what do I want? Okay. Do I actually want this cup of coffee or do I just want some warm water? How's my internal state? Like, how does my tummy feel? Like, and then go in and then listen to what the answer is. It might be something different. These are little things that you can do on a daily basis that helps to have you trust your intuitive guidance. Because when that is strengthened, you don't need to go and seek anything else. That is the freedom, is that you have all the answers and you don't have to go, okay, 6 months down the road, these are all my goals. Like, that's all nice to have, but knowing that the moment is now. Your moment is right now. And the reason why it's so hard to be present in the moment right now is that we're constantly trained about being prepared for the next minute. What are we going to do next? What's our next goals? Going. But when we come inside and we can strengthen our intuitive guidance system, then we can have that sense of freedom because we know and trust that we always know that we're taken care of because we can listen and trust our own system. Like, that's freedom.
Yeah, it's so true. And isn't there such a magic feeling of flow when you know you're in that moment?
Totally.
Like, I know everybody at some point, like if you're watching this, I know that you have felt at some point that feeling of being present moment, that feeling of trust, surrender, and like flow. I call it flow state, right? When all is effortless in that moment. And even in moments when we're not in that moment, we can go back to the feeling of that moment, the memory of it, because it's within your whole being. And it can help you recalibrate back into that. Like, it can guide you back into that safe harbor, if you will.
Yeah.
Because it's from there that we have like our greatest creative potential.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And when they're talking about illuminating through relationships, what a great way to like have that as your barometer. Okay, my relationship, this is being reflected back to me. These are the words that they're saying. That's your opportunity to go inside and be like, does this actually resonate? Is this true? Like, this might be true for them, this might be true for their perception of this whole situation, but it's not mine. Freedom right there.
Freedom. Oh, so beautiful. Elyse, you look like you were gone again. What else did you get?
No, not really. I was just I was just thinking about, I keep hearing this song. It's one of my favorite songs, and it's been one of my favorite songs for a long time. So I was just kind of like listening to that while you guys are talking. It's this song by Kygo called Freedom, and it's just it is like the embodiment of freedom in a song. And obviously it's called that, but it's just like the energy of the music. And it's very like, so I always listen to that song on a sunny day or when I want to like elicit that feeling of freedom in myself. Cause sometimes we also have to, if we are feeling bogged down, it's like, I like to go into my body and elicit the experience, and then it tends to ripple into my brain. So maybe a little tidbit. It's a really like uplifting, fun song. And I just keep hearing it like over and over in my head.
Yeah. Awesome. Amazing. Any other last
I think that's
bits?
a pretty good message to leave people with for the summer of freedom.
Yeah. Like soaking up the sunlight, being in the present moment, manifesting when it flows in. Like, yeah. I know that's really going to help me a lot too. It's just like,
and
be
like
in the body,
have that
be present.
definitely, like even if we have those little moments of affirmation every morning when we wake up, like just like feet hit the ground, sit on the side of your bed and just 2 seconds of like, I bring myself into my fullest potential, my greatest good, and trust that, I have absolutely everything I could need right here, right now, and guide me with that internal knowing.
Amazing.
Boom.
Mic drop right there. Done. Done. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We wish you all a beautiful, amazing summer of discovery, of joy, of happiness. And we will be back in the fall. So we look forward to connecting with you all then. And if any of you want to reach out to us at any point during the summer, you can do so on the Avalon Spirit Facebook group. So definitely check that out. And we will see you all later.
Maybe we'll throw our Instagrams in the bio in case, or in the write-up of YouTube. So if people want to
Okay.
connect with us there over the summer too.
You betcha. All right, everyone. See you later.
Bye.